What's going on, guys? My name is Commander, coach of Sylveon KC, but more importantly, lead analyst for IDL Season 3, and this is the post-draft power rankings for IDL Season 3. I am not alone this week, as we have coach of the Ontario Omastars, Mr. Vampire218 here. Please say hello.
Hello, everyone. Vamp218 here. Super hyped to be welcome onto the show, and I'm really excited to share the power rankings that we have with you. Now, please do note that Commanders are the official power rankings, so the power rankings that you will see on the doc are his. I have my own, though, and that's what will be shown in the video alongside his, just to see how they pair up.
So, without further ado, we're going to jump in straight to number 16, where Vamp has Logic, coach of the Bikini Bottom Blastoise, where I have Carson, coach of the Arizona Diamond Storm. So give your explanation of Logic's real fast while I actually get my notes.
Okay, so there are some pretty big flaws that I'm seeing with Logic's team in that he has no mon above a 100 speed. He has the lowest base stat total in 500. He has the lowest speed in 66. If you look at his team, he has a couple mons at 100 in Jirachi, Comfey, and he has Xatu at 95. But then his speed takes a massive dip to 70 in Mantine, and then a dip to Umbreon at 65. And then it just keeps like going around at the between like 40 and 60 range from there. Now, he also has 39 weaknesses, which is pretty good, like pretty high. He has 57 resistances, so he's good on that portion, but he only has the one spinner in War Turtle. And it's a spinner that is very predictable spinner, so you can really deal with it. In addition to that, his defoggers of Mantine, Xatu, and Luantis, two of those are weak to electricity. So between War Turtle and the other two, he has three of his hazard removers weak to electricity. So I had to put him at 16.
I have Mr. Carson at 16th, not because he has bad hazards, because he has 3 stealth rockers, 2 toxic spikes. He even has sticky webs. So that will help out the fact that he's one of the faster teams. It's still slow. But what really hurts his team is his special attacking presence is by far the lowest in the entire league. Which, that's okay, but you know that you're going to be running. All you have to do is throw some physical walls at him, because all he's going to do is hitting you with attacks. Also, massive weakness. He has Mega Beedrill, Toxapex, Amoonguss. All 3 of those are massively weak to Psychic. He even has Tapu Lele. That's his special attacking presence, really. And he does have a Dark type in Sneasel. However, Sneasel without Focus Sash is quite frail, and even with Focus Sash is even frailer. And his hazard removal of Sand Slash, you know if Sand Slash comes, what's going to, it's going to be strictly for rapid spin purposes. So that's why I put Carson at 16th, and now moving on to 15th, we flip-flop, where I have Logic at 15th, and Vamp has Carson at 15th.
Do you want me to go first for this one?
I can sum up Logic rather fast.
Okay.
Logic's main idea, or what he told me, is a Trick Room team, which makes perfect sense for how stupid slow his team is. The bad thing about that is everyone knows he's a Trick Room team. They can totally counter that. And Trick Room may be great for like 3 matches. However, you can't bring Trick Room every single week. And if that's your basis of your team and you have nothing else to support it, then you're not going to do well. He has some really nice mons. Umbreon's always really good to wish things up. He has a Alolan Marowak. He has the Haxie Jirachi. And he even has like Mega Ampharos, which is great in a Trick Room team. But outside of a Trick Room team, you gotta hope that you live a hit. So, yeah, that's why Logic's 15th for me. You can go on and talk about Carson in your 15th
Okay,
spot.
so you mentioned some of the big points, but I mean, even just looking at his sheet, 5 fire weaknesses, 4 ground weaknesses, 5 rock weaknesses, 4 water weaknesses. He has so many of these weaknesses that are fives and fours, and that's huge because that means every week people can bring those moves, and the best that they're going to get is that he is forced into bringing a mon that covers that weakness. So, take for example his ground weaknesses. He only has one Pokemon with a ground immunity. So that means that every week he is guaranteed to have basically a ground weakness unless he just doesn't bring any of those Mons. And even if he does, then he has to bring his ground immunity Pokemon or suffer that weakness. In addition to that, he only has the one spinner, and he has Defog on Mega Beedrill, which really shouldn't be using Defog. His base stat total being 510 is still very low for a league team. And he only has the one cleric in Tapu Lele, and that's really awkward just because Tapu Lele really doesn't want to be using aromatherapy. It really wants to be hitting very hard. So that's why I have him at number 15.
I would agree to that. 14th, we both agreed that even though Chewy, coach of Bellevue Farfetch, has the highest HP base average out of everyone, the highest attack average out of everyone, and the highest special attack average out of everyone, he also has the least amount of hazard control out of everyone because he doesn't have any.
And just to build up upon that, he has no clerics either. He does only have 30 weaknesses. A lot of those are ice and ground weaknesses. Three, I believe, 2 times 4 ice weaknesses, 2 regular ice weaknesses, and 4 ground weaknesses is huge.
And his team hits like a truck, but if you can outspeed him, which his speed is the 3rd worst in the draft, you can out-hit him like a truck. I will warn people, if you're trying to defog, he does have Bisharp, which that may stop people from trying to get rid of hazards on his side, but really...
Well, he has more than just Bisharp. He has, I believe... He has Thunderous Incarnate with Defiant. He has Tornadus Incarnate with Defiant. He has Bisharp with Defiant. So he has 3 Defiant users, which is very impactful if he is playing smart with this team.
Correct. So moving on to number 13, Vamp has Reggie, coach of the Honolulu Vulpix, while I have Danger, brand new coach to the IDL. And let's start with Reggie.
Okay, so Reggie's team on the surface looks very solid. He has Kartana, he has Manaphy, he has Weavile, he has these Mons that really hit hard, and he even has Scolipede, which is a great speed passer. His speed tier's very good. He has the 125, he has the nice 112, he has the 105, he has the 110, and he scales down okay. But he doesn't have any way of removing hazards. He has 4 rock weaknesses. He only has 1 rock resist. He has a good amount of clerics, but his team feels a little too predictable to me. You bring hazards and they're pretty much gonna stay. He only has 3 Mons that can even set up hazards on his team. And of those Mons, if he's using Scolipede as a hazard setter, it's much less likely that it's going to want to be a baton passer because you're giving up that item slot for the required moves that Scolipede needs in Protect, in Sub, in Baton Pass. Mega Camerupt, it's a tier 4 Mega for a reason. That times 4 weakness to ground is huge. The fact that he has 2 times 4 weaknesses to ground, he has 1 times 4 weakness to water, and a times 4 weakness to fighting. It's very awkward, his team, I think. So
I'll cover more of that once we get to him.
Mm-hmm.
I have Danger sitting at 13th. his team, like if you glance over it, there's some really scary mons. He has Mega Charizard Y. He has Milotic, which takes a lot of hits, as I've found out. He has Lando T. That's always scary. Lando T took a long time to get drafted. He has Cobalion, which I had last season and is a great steel type. He has Clefable. Somehow he got Clefable like second to last round. Some people were not smart. And then he has Mons that like Scrafty or Alolan Raichu, which do well, except unless he brings some really weird set, you can expect it's kind of easy to predict what team he would do. He also has Sun with Alolan Executor, so you know what he could bring as soon as you see the team. And I mean, it's not to say that it's a bad team, but also his Rapid Spinner of Avalugg, which is also weak to rocks. And I mean, he does have a defogger, but you don't want Mega Charizard Y defogging. So that's why Danger is 13th in my opinion. We're going to move on to the next group, which I have Reggie as 12th, and Vamp has the newcomer Atlas at 12th. I'm going to go straight into Reggie here. Reggie's team, as I think every single draft he's ever done in his life, hits like a truck. He has one of the highest attack stats, sitting at 103. He's also the second fastest team at base 88, which that's sad because that would have been 5th last season. He has a lot of really scary threats. Kartana, Weavile, Manaphy. I mean, Rotom Heat scares people. Gardevoir, if you AV it, can really do a lot. He has Scolipede, and he is one of the best Scolipede users, in my opinion. They work by themselves. They do not have a whole lot of synergy together, and I think that's what really hurts his team, is that his synergy is not present. You can talk about Atlas, who
has a very interesting draft, is how I'll say it. So, Atlas has no way of removing, or he has no spinner, I should say. He has ways of removing hazards. However, his ways of removing hazards are Charizard, which is ×4 weak to rock, Ninjask, which is ×4 weak to rock, Togekiss, which is weak to rock, and Scizor, which is neutral to rock. In addition, he has some pretty big openings on his team. He does have 4 electric weaknesses, 4 fighting weaknesses, and he has, I think, one of the highest resistances in 62, which is huge. But he has that because his team is very full of steel types. And that being said, he only does have the 2 Mon hazards, and they are Stealth Rocks and Spikes. And only, Ferrothorn, which can set up both Stealth Rocks and Spikes. It's pretty predictable that that's going to be coming every week if he wants to get up hazards, because I don't believe Disgreasby really wants to use Spikes. And, anytime there's a team that has over 3 weaknesses in a specific type, I really have to look at that team and be like, what are you going to do with that? And that being said, 2 of those rock weaknesses are ×4, like I mentioned. He also has the 2 ×4 fire weaknesses because of Scizor and Ferrothorn. It really means, how is he going to cover that? And the manner in which he does cover that is pretty predictable, that if he's bringing one of those Mons with fire, he's probably bringing Rotom Wash that week.
I would agree to that. Moving on to number 11. We both agreed that Shadow, coach of the Jersey Shellos, is number 11, and the easiest way I can talk about Shadow's team is it's about as awkward as his Shellos in his icon, because I think he has like 5 or 6 tier 3s, and if we were drafting and we could only use tier 3 and down, he would completely body everyone. But his team, I know that he kind of was, according to what they were saying, he was drafting for fun. His first pick was Salazzle, out of all things. And towards the end, when he picked up Metagross and Magnezone...
Right, he picked up Metagross as his free agency.
Metagross was the franchise pick, but having Magnezone as his last pick, which was a really smart move, in my opinion. his team is not horrible. His stats are not horrible. He has Rapid Spin, he has Defog, he has Magic Bounce because he has Mega Absol, but it's
It's awkward to say the least, and I can take over here if you would like.
go for it.
So he has no clerics, and you don't need a cleric by any means, but even having one cleric on your team means that, to me, if at the end of the day, if you have a cleric, it's better because it gives you more options and it gives your opponent more that they have to think about in prepping. Now he has 3 ways of removing hazards in Pelipper, Desudaize, and Him on Top, and all 3 of these are viable defoggers and rapid spinners, but they're also pretty predictable in that he's probably going to bring them every week because he kind of has to. And he only has 2 mons that can set up hazards, which are stealth rocks. Both are very good rockers. But again, it's pretty predictable on how you counter them. Garchomp, you use Ice. Metagross, you use Knockoff. And combine that with, unless he's bringing Hitmontop the same week he brings Metagross, Pelipper doesn't want to get knocked off. Desudaize definitely doesn't want to get knocked off. And then even just going into his weaknesses and resistances. Yeah, he has a ton of resistances in 64 with 9 immunities, 6 times 4 resists. That's awesome. But then you start looking at his weaknesses and you're like, oh, because he has 2 times 4 ground weaknesses. He has 1 times 4 steel weaknesses. He has 4 rock weaknesses, which is huge because he has a very limited way of removing rocks. He has 4 fairy weaknesses, 4 fire weaknesses. It's very predictable on how to beat him, I feel, and it makes the prepping a little bit easier. His stats, barring HP, aren't horrible. His base stat total at 510 feels kind of low, and he has access to great mons. He has access to rain. He has access to hail. He has access to mons that get the other moves as well. I just don't see the synergy in a lot of these mons because you don't want to bring Garchomp with 9 tails. You definitely don't. Pelipper on its own is very counterintuitive because of Thunder, and he definitely wouldn't want to bring Pelipper the same time he brings a Rockwanid, so because of the Thunder issue. So it's very interesting draft, and I'm very excited to see how he'll use it.
I see. Moving on to 10th, which we both agreed, was myself, aka Commander, coach of Sylveon KC. You talk about me first. I'm not even going
All right.
You can say whatever you want. I'm going to mute you, and we'll hear. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you guys. Up until this point, I knew that the 16 through 11, I was going to have those teams that I said. I just didn't know the order, so I had to nitpick through and be like, well, this team has, more of this or less of that. At this point, I made another little list, which I believe was 11 to 6, or 11 to 5, and I knew all of these teams that I put in these positions would be here. Now, the reason I put Commander at the top here is he doesn't have a Rapid Spinner. He has 3 Defoggers. Mega Aerodactyl doesn't really want to defog, though, because of that rock weakness. Now, Empoleon and Latios, great defoggers. Empoleon being, double nice because of Defiant. He only has 3 mons that really set up hazards. Empoleon, again, awesome. Mega Aerodactyl, maybe it's not as good as regular Aerodactyl because it wants to attack more. And then Drapion with Toxic Spikes, which is okay. His stats are all pretty balanced, excluding HP again, because he has nothing over 100 HP. Base stat total, very nice, which is why he's kind of, in the 10th spot and not any lower on the list. He has a lot of evolutions, never a bad thing. They have some pretty good abilities. But then you go down to his typings, and he has he has 4 weaknesses to ground. He has 4 weaknesses to ice. He has 3 rock weaknesses with no spinner. He has a lot of clerics, which is awesome. But it's going to be very difficult for him to work around those hazards because he's constantly going to be having to, do I defog now or what do I do this? And even with those defog users, 2 of them are weak to electricity. Latios being the only one that really isn't. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he plays around those. So it's going to be up to you now, Guy.
I'm back.
Okay.
I kept on unmuting and it's like hazards, hazards, cleric, hazards. So I only got like 4 words out of that, but I'll talk briefly about my team. If you can't tell, I like evolutions. And if you can't tell, I like speed. And both of those worked really well. If for some reason Latios was my second to last, so it's like, hey, let's
Latios.
get Latios. And yeah, I completely forgot it got defog, so that's a second defogger. I was only expecting Empoleon. That's probably the biggest weakness of the team, and if you asked me a month ago if I would ever draft a team where really there's 1 or 2 ways of getting rid of hazards and 1 or 2 ways of getting up hazards, I would have laughed at you. But this team just, it didn't pan out in the end, I guess. I mean, I only got sniped once, and I got a better pick from that. But it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a fun team to watch. It should get some really interesting plays, and yeah, don't expect defog on my Gyaradoc. Moving on to 9th, I have Atlas, and Vamp has Pharynix, one of the very long veterans of the IDL, and coach of the Toronto Star Raptors. So you talk about Pharynix for a little sec.
All right, so what Pharynix's team has is only has the one spinner. And again, spinning is, in my opinion, the best way to get rid of them, just because you don't get rid of your own. And that's huge. He has a good amount of Pokemon that can set up hazards in 4. He has Gligarp. That thing wants to set up hazards. Claydol, absolutely. Mew, 100%. And a Selgor, maybe not really, but whatever. Claydol being his only spinner means that a lot of the time he's wanting to bring hazard removal, they can bring ice, because Gligar is also one of his defoggers. And Mew is his other defogger, meaning if they bring Dark, they're going to cover both Mew and Claydol. So if you bring a Pokemon that is maybe Sneasel that has access to both Ice and Dark, you can cover, I believe, all of his hazard setters, excluding Excelgor, all of his hazard removers. He has 3 clerics. That's okay. 4 ground weaknesses, 4 ice weaknesses, and he doesn't cover his other weaknesses very well. Yeah, he has 5 grass resists, but what does he do to his ice weakness? He has 2 ice resists only. So while he does only have the 2 rock weaknesses, it's without having a really good way of removing them. I don't think it's going to pan out in the end. He has a 520 base stat total, which is okay. His speed tier's okay. I'm just really interested to see how he will use these models.
I'll talk a little bit more about Pharynix coming up. I took Atlas at the number 9 spot, and in my opinion, Atlas has like a solid team. If you look at his stats, he actually, like, if you look at every single person's stat, he doesn't have like the best stats compared to everyone, but he also has, how do you put this, the least worst. Like, there's a lot more people that are worse than him in certain departments. I mean, he has Scizor, Ferrothorn, that's fire, but then he picked up Gyarados, and he has Rotom Wash, and he has Charizard, which I've never understood anyone drafting regular Charizard in Draft League format, but I'm not one to judge. He has Espeon, really nice. He has Kyurem, that's coming scarfed every single time. His team is good. I'll be interested to see if he can put them together good. With that being said, we are now going to move into the next grouping of peoples. 8th, I have Vampire, and Vampire has Mr. Danger. So do you want to talk about Danger first?
I will talk about Danger first. Yeah, that actually will be a good transition. So, Danger. Now, we talked about this a little bit. I'm going to expand on it a little bit more. So, Danger's team, it's okay. That's about the best way I can put it. His speed tiering, he doesn't have anything above 112. That he has a good amount of speed, sure. He has a lot of Mons over. but they don't really tier good after that. He has like 91 and then an 81. So they tier okay. All of his stats aren't bad, but they're not like, wow, that's broken. He has a lot of mons that I see actually running synergy together because he has the Sun with Harvest, which is always nice. He has, Scrafty, which, Intimidate or Moxie, always good. He has the double Intimidate. He has Lycanroc Day, I believe, for the awesome Celarrock priority. He has Lando T for, Intimidate, hard hitter. He has Cobalion, great lead. Raichu, awesome Pokemon. Like, everything except for Meowstic M, I see him using. And Meowstic M, I'm just not comfortable with. So, his main issue is his hazard removal. Both are weak to rocks. He only has the one spinner in Avalugg. But he does have the Cleric and Clefable. He only has the 1/4 weakness in fighting, but he covers that very well with 5 fighting resists. He only has the 1x4 weakness to rock with 2 overall rock weaknesses, being both of his hazard removers. So it's not going to be as big an issue for him. And just overall, yeah, he does have 2x4 ice weaknesses, but he has 3 ice resists. Yeah, he has a fairy ×4. And that's, I think, maybe his biggest issue is his fairy weaknesses. But again, Scrafty doesn't need to come every week. So overall, his draft was okay. It wasn't, game-breakingly powerful, but it's not, oh man, how are you going to win with Pichus?
Good points made. Talking about my pick, which happens to be the person in the call, Mr. Vampire. And he just muted. No, he didn't mute himself. Never mind.
I didn't mute myself.
I thought he did. Anyway.
No.
Vampire's team, if you look at your base stat total, kids, he has the highest defense out of every person. He has the highest special defense out of every person. He has the 3rd highest total base stat total out of every person. His team walls trucks. His team can hit trucks with Kyurem Black. The only reason I have him so low is even though Pukamuku really jabs down the speed department with that awesome 5 base stat total. First off, just talking about hazards and hazard control real fast. Perfect. I'm just afraid he's going to go into a match and that's going to get taken out immediately because that Delmise, okay, that can run Defog. That's pretty easy. He has Zapdos running Defog, and if both are coming, that Zapdos usually is the one that's not going to have that Defog. And the Rapid Spin of Blastoise is really great. That Blastoise is going to have Rapid Spin if Blastoise comes. Mega Aggron, where Kyurem Black absolutely hates fairies, unless she's running Iron Head, but even still hates fairies. Mega Aggron says, give me all the fairies you want, I'll just hit you with a Heavy Slam. So Vamp's team, defensively, is the best out of everyone, according to the stats. It'll be interesting to see how fast he can get people down, because I think the longer the battles are, the worse it'll get. Moving on to number 7, where Vamp has himself, and I have Bree.
I'll talk about myself first here. So, looking at my team, I've got 4 Mons, or I got 3 Mons who can set up hazards. I have access to both Toxic Spikes and Stealth Rocks. All 3 of my Mons that can set up hazards are going to want to set up hazards. Uxie's not a powerhouse. Uxie's a defensive Pokemon that sets up hazards. Nidoqueen has access to become a powerhouse, but it can also be a nice hazard-setting utility Mon. Mega Aggron as well. It's kind of in the same position as Nidoqueen. It can be a powerhouse hitter, or it can be a nice hazard-setting lead. I have good hazard removal. Neither of my hazard removal are, super weak to the same type. I have Electricity being covered by Delamise's resistance, and Blastoise's weaknesses are covered by Delamise, and vice versa, kind of. Because, the fire weakness is covered by Blastoise. That being said, I don't see myself bringing both of them in the same week. They do form a good. I have two good clerics in both Florges and Uxie, both of which want to be clerics. Florges running the aromatherapy, that's pretty common. I don't have any weaknesses that are ×4. I also don't have any weaknesses above 3, meaning the worst I have is like 3 ground weaknesses, 3 ice weaknesses, 3 fighting weaknesses. But then I have 4 ways of I have 5 resistances and immunities in fighting. For ice, I have 4. Ground is probably my biggest issue there, but even with that, I have ways around that. Looking at my base stat total, it's huge. I got Kyurem Black. It's supposed to be. My speed is really drawn down by Pikumiku, which is a very niche bring. It's a Pokemon that will come very specific weeks to deal with very specific situations. My speed tiering could have been a little bit better. I don't have anything above the 110, which is kind of, oh well. But, I messed up in my draft. I was going to go for something like Greninja or Alakazam so that I could speed tier a little bit better, but I messed up my points. I'm pretty happy with my speed where it is, though. I should be able to out-tank my opponents and then outplay them in that manner is what I'm trying to go for here.
Moving on my end, I chose Bree, and Bree's team, if you look at it, is solid. It's one of the more solid teams for the season. She has Tapu Koko, Staraptor, Mega Gardevoir, Donphan, Suicune, which I hope she gets Suicune. But from how I see it, she has about 5.5 really good Mons. And she has 5.5 okay Mons. I mean, she has Sun with Ninetales and Venusaur, but if both of those coming, that's coming. Cofagrigus, if used properly, is a pain in the butt. But you got to use it properly. And you know what it's going to do. She has Mudsdale, which, yeah, you can run AV Mudsdale. You can run all sorts of different Mudsdales. Mudsdale can't get rid of its weaknesses. And furthermore, I assume Licky Tongue was a fun little pick because Licky Licky was taken. But that's Bree sitting at number 7. Moving on to number 6. I have Pharynix, which I'll talk briefly about Pharynix, and then Vampire has Mud. Pharynix's team is the best he's ever drafted in the IDL out of all 3 seasons. His team is really, really good. He has Mew. Mew can do just about anything you want it to, as long as you know what you want it to do. Mega Altaria. If Sylveon wasn't a thing, I would probably be drafting Mega Altaria every time, because it is a fantastic fairy. It can set up, it can sit down, and it can watch your opponents cry in tears. He has a lot of really, really, really good Mons. He covers a lot of his types very well. All of his Mons are really good, but there's not any, questionable on, okay, so he has these Mons, it can be taken out by this. And if I remember right, he has some very overlapping weaknesses. And especially when you get into things that don't like rocks, and you only have Hazard Control, or Rapid Spin with Claydol, which, granted, Claydol can be great for Rapid Spin if you can... It's one of those, you either use it well or you think it's garbage. And I assume with Pharynix drafting it, he thinks he can use it well, and I will be very happy to see how he uses it. Okay, this is your pick that I have not understood yet. Why is Mud 6th?
Well, looking at Mud's team, on the surface, it looks very, very good. 557 base stat total is huge. None of his stats are really bad. That being said, he only has a few Mons that really want to be special attackers. He has Victini, which can kind of go both. He has Mega Blastoise. And then his, he has Crobat, which can kind of go both, but it doesn't do either, exceedingly well. And then he has Latias and Luxray, but Luxray prefers to be physical. So overall, in that regard, he's going to be a more physically oriented team. And that in itself is going to prove to be a little issue for prepping for him, because you can know, well, I should focus more on physical defense. In addition, a lot of his Mons only have access to one ability, or the secondary ability isn't really viable in a league. Or, the other abilities probably won't use. So, Mamoswine more than often than not is going to be Thick Fat. Crobat more often than not is going to be Infiltrator. Things like that, where it's going to be pretty obvious what he's bringing. Luxray is probably the most versatile in that department, either having Guts or Intimidate. His resistances, he covers them pretty good. He has 36 weaknesses. That's not horrible. He's 53 resistances. That's good. He only has 2 times 4 weaknesses in flying and ground, and he covers those pretty good. Nothing more than 3 weaknesses. His hazard removal, though, he only has Mega Blastoise as a rapid spinner. He has 3 good defoggers. A lot of those Mon want to use defog, except for Crobat. But then you start looking a little more into it. 2 of them are fairies with an ice weakness. And if you add Crobat in there for the ice weakness, you have 3 of his hazard removers having ice weaknesses, and 2 of his hazard removers having electric weaknesses. So, on that level, you're kind of getting to the point where, well, I only have to run a couple different spread moves to hit the majority of his ways of getting rid of hazards. Now, he doesn't have an overexposure to hazards. He only has 2 rock weaknesses. But hazards are going to do things like break his sashes. His speed tier is pretty good. He has Crobat. He has Latias. But Crobat's not that kind of Mon you want to bring every week. Unlike Latias, so, his main speed is going to start at like 110. And it doesn't really tier down very well after that, because he has 100, and then it jumps down to 80. So his hazard setters, he has Mamoswine and Registeel. But I just don't see them both coming in the same week that often. I feel like it's going to be one or the other. And he only has the 1 Cleric and Lickilicky, which, again, isn't really that kind of Mon you want to bring every week. So he has a good team. He definitely has the best team that we've talked about so far. But I found a lot less wrong with the following teams, just based on, synergy or various other factors.
Good points made. Moving on to number 5, which this is the last person that we agreed on. Making his return is Mr. Scotty Dr. Pepper, coach of the Houston Rocketots. His team is honestly, his team is really scary if you look at it. He has things like, first off, he got Exegel. He has Tapu Bulu, and you don't want to click Earthquake on Tapu Bulu. He has Goodra, which is an awesome dragon type. He has Tentacruel, which not only is good for being the water type, but is great for getting rid of hazards. He has Darmanitan, which for some reason is still tier 3. He has one of the best tier 5s in Miltank. He gets even more points because he got Mega Banette. He took Corey's Meloetta, and we all know from last season what Meloetta can do. He has Conklander, so now you got to worry about a really hard-hitting fire truck in fighting type. He has Masquerain, which can set up sticky webs and quiver dance and be annoying, and he has Raichu, which is something some people sleep on. However, I feel like people are going to see that as an issue, and maybe a Raichu Tapu Bulu mix would be really smart.
So, you want me to go into what I have for him?
You got all the details. Go into it.
Yeah, I got some more details here. So, in this point, I knew that, he was the last I had in this little set. I knew he wouldn't be in top 4, and there were some reasons for that. His team is very scary, and he has everything I was looking for in a top 5 team. That being said, though, the teams above him just did it a little bit better, I feel. So just going into the defenses, 75 in defense isn't bad, But if you look at his mons that are actually defensive, Excadrill only in 60 in defense, Goodra only 70 in defense, Tentacruel 65, Darmanitan 55, Masquerain 62, Raichu 55. So a lot of these mons are going to get hit pretty hard on the physical side. On the special side, he's in a much better position, having Goodra at 150, Tentacruel at 120, Meloetta at 128. And, even the ones above 80, like Masquerain and Raichu, on the special side, and even Bulu with 95, on the special side, he's much better covered. Both of his offenses can hit very hard on both sides. Masquerain having 100, although I don't see Masquerain being a every week bring. But Raichu, Meloetta, Mega Banette even, although Mega Banette does want to be physical more often than not. Goodra, he has a lot more options, is what I'm trying to say. For hazards, he has access to 3 different types of hazards throughout 4 mons, which is always nice. Excadrill, it's a type of mon you could bring every week. The same with Tentacruel. Miltank, more often than not. Masquerain is really his niche pick here, but even so, it's not a horrible pick. Base stat total-wise, though, he's somewhat low with only 523, I find. Looking at his abilities, he has really good abilities. He has access to that Mold Breaker. He has access to Grassy Surge, which gives him the grassy terrain. He has Goodra, which has 3 amazing abilities if he can set up the rain. Combining that with both Tentacruel and the Raichu, he has a good position there to set up a Rain Dance, and, if they want to use Thunder on him, he just switches into Raichu. He has access to things like Serene Grace. He has double Sap Sipper. He has Sheer Force. His abilities are amazing. His weaknesses and resistances are, though, I think why he's at the 5th spot. 4 ground weaknesses that he doesn't really cover that well, with only 2 ways of covering them. That's one of his major exposures there. He has good hazard removers, but again, everyone above him, I feel, just does it a little better.
Okay, moving into our top 4, which you should know, well, on my side, you should know these 4. Vampire side, Bree is in the top 4, but on my side, it's actually the IDL Season 2 Final 4. So in 4th place for me, I have Levo, coach of the Tulsa Infernos, and Vampire has Bree, coach of Davenport Suicunes. You talk about Bree real fast.
Okay, so, looking at Bree's team, I'm actually very scared. Because looking at her base stat total, 512, that's really low. But then you start looking into it a little more. She has amazing speed tiering with the Tapu Koko at 130, the 8 Ambipom at 115, the 100s, which she has 3 of, and then after that, it doesn't tier too well. But she has a lot of those really fast mons. And then even after that, she still has Suicune at 85 and Venusaur at 80. Which is pretty big. Her overall stats, barring speed, nothing below 80, which is good. And again, even with speed being below 80, she has a lot of really fast mons. And we're going to talk about speed again in a second, because she has Ninetales. Because going to her abilities, she has Ninetales with the Drought, which combines with the nice Chlorophyll Venusaur. She also has access to Intimidate through Staraptor. She has access to Electric Terrain. She has Lickitung, which we're going to go into in a little bit when we go over it stats when we get back to that. She has a good, Ambipom lead, which could fake out U-turn. She has Coffagrigus, which wants to tank all day. She has access to hazards, which is Donphan and Coffagrigus, meaning she has 2 different types of hazards. And that's pretty big as well. She has hazard removers in Staraptor and Donphan. Again, Donphan being the primary one, obviously. And she has access to 2 clerics. Now, she does have an exposure to ice. However, 27 weaknesses isn't horrible. But once again, like I said, going forward, we're going to start seeing a couple of common themes here. She covers her weaknesses excluding ice pretty good, and even her ice weakness, 2 ice resistances, is pretty good. 10 immunities, though, is very large because, ghost types, well, she has 3 ghost immunities. Going back into the Lickitung, which is, I believe, the pick that you didn't really understand, having 90 in HP and 75 in both defensive stats and being an EVO light user is huge, because this thing isn't going to be coming to do damage. This thing is going to be coming to take hits, to send out toxics, to cleric away statuses. It's a utility pick, and the 385 really doesn't represent what it is going to be doing. And I think that's one of the main reasons her base stat total is so low. Kind of like how I have Piku Miku on my team as that utility pick. She has Lickitung. A couple other picks here that you had, kind of talked about. Mudsdale. Mudsdale is a very good sleeper pick. If you get some of those stamina boosts, Mudsdale becomes a beast, and she has the team to support it. She has things like Star Raptor that late game she can switch in, force the switch around game. And because she does have access to both Toxic Spikes and Stealth Rocks, if they can't get rid of those Toxic Spikes, they're going to be on a timer. I see a lot more synergy with her team than a lot of the previous teams through the Ninetales, the Venusaur, and then, the electric terrain with things like Cofagrigus and stuff. Now, Suicune is obviously her staple pick that she's very comfortable with. And I just overall see this entire team working very well together. And I'm really interested to see if she will be able to make it work the way I think she can.
Okay. Moving on to Levo, coach of the Tulsa Infernos. And Levo's team, if you read off his first 4 picks of franchise T-Tran, Celesteal, Mega Venusaur, and Cresselia, and you will wonder why someone is that legal? It should be illegal. That is a freaking scary core to try and deal with. Like, even mentally, like, that will screw over your prep, because you're going to be worried so much about those 4 mons just sitting on you. And you won't realize that, hey, he's one of the best Cryogonal users that you can find, and he has Cryogonal. Hey, he has Nidoking, so bye-bye fairies. He has Floatzel, which most people don't think Floatzel does a really good job, but Floatzel will do a really good job after you lose to it. He has Zoroark, which really can screw you up if it's one of the first 4 mons. The reason that Levo's not as high is Mud or so, and when I was doing my prep for just looking over the teams, my front office pointed out Levo's not going to bring Celesteal, Mega Venusaur, Cresselia, and Heatran all as bulky walls. I mean, he can, but he's not going to do that. One of them's going to be one of his offensive pressures. He can't just sit there and wall things. And if he brings all 4, there's going to be a lot more attackers on his team. Levo loves to do his hyper offense and his awesome attacking. He's not like Corey. He doesn't just sit there and watch you think of your life choices and question your sanity. So that's why I have Levo for. It is a really scary team. In my opinion, it's the most bulky team, but you know that he's not going to bulk everyone out. That's not his play style. I don't think that's how he likes to play, in my opinion. Unlike Corey, who likes to make people suffer. But we'll get into Corey later. Moving on to number 3, Vamp has Levo, and Mudbud, who I faced week 1, is 3rd. I'm going to talk briefly about Mudbud real fast.
Actually, why don't you let me talk about Levo?
Okay.
You just finished, so yeah. So like he said, just expanding on those points, Levo has an amazing draft. Like, I honestly think it's probably one of the best drafts he's had in an IDL. Looking at his team, like he said, he has the bulk of a Chansey with a shield around it. Cresselia, a mon he knows to use very well. Celestelia, a mon he knows how to use very well. Mega Venusaur, a mon he knows how to use very well. Heatran, a mon he knows how to use very well. Cryogonal, a mon he knows how to use very well. So not only does he have the mons, he knows how to use the majority of these mons, and that's just as scary as having the power. I would be more afraid of someone who doesn't have mons but knows how to use what they have rather than just pure power. And he has both, and that's the scariest part. Looking over the stats, 532, pretty good base stat total, to be honest. It's not horrible compared to what we've seen. It's not, the super highest, but it's not the lowest by any means. 85 speed. His speed tiering is not horrible. He has the 115 in Floatzel, not an every week bring, but certainly not a Mon to sleep on. Like he said, a lot of people don't think Floatzel can do work. I've seen it put in a lot of work. It's going to probably get a kill or two each game. It's not going to sweep an entire team, but it could. He has two 105s in Cryogonal and Zora, and those two Mons are really hard to deal with because that Levo has heat sets for Cryogonal, and Zoroark, for I believe a tier 3 pick this season, it's huge. Because it puts in so much work in a game that if you're not thinking and predicting, you can make a major mess up when you use a move against it and reveal stuff that you don't want to reveal. Looking over his other Mons, a lot of very high base stat totals. Heatran 600, Mega Venusaur 625, even Celestelia at 570 is really, you shouldn't think of it as a 570 because most of the time you're not going to OHKO this thing and it's going to get a beast boost, and that 570 is going to look a little more like a over 600. Looking at his abilities, he has the abilities that you would want to see. He has the Beast Boost, he has the Thick Cut, he has the Levitate. Disguise, something we haven't really seen in leagues up until this point, but I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of Mimikyu being as a utility pick. Flash Fire for that nice fire immunity. He covers his weaknesses very well. Speaking of weaknesses, having 31 is very good. No weaknesses above 4. Above 3 even. He has no weaknesses above 3. He only has 1 ×4 ground weakness, which he does cover through, I believe, 2 immunities, even though they're not on there, because the resistances and immunities charts do not take into consideration abilities. So while it does only say he has 1 ground immunity, he actually has 3 because of Cresselia's Levitate and Cryogonal's Levitate. For hazards, he does only have 2 hazard setters in Heatran and Nidoking. However, we both know that he's able to use these to their full extent in either offensively, defensively, or utility. Both of his hazard removers are very good at what they do because Cryogonal, while being weak to rocks, we know that he can use it utility-wise to get rid of them, and Hitmonchan is resistant to rocks. So he does have a Cleric in Ampharos again. Now, Ampharos is one of those Mons, again, not going to come every week. It's a much more utility pick. So, that's all I really have for him. He has one that I think I've ever seen him have in the IDLs. So,
moving on my side to Mud, and Mud's team, if you look at his first 4 picks, you're going to be, oh, well, there goes everyone and their dreams, because Victini, personally, I think one of the best fire types in League Draft format. It was my first ever pick in League Draft format. It is scary. You don't know what it's going to bring. You'll plan for physical, and it'll be special. That just happened to me. Buzzwald, I mean, I know Buzzwald can do a lot of work. I've yet to see it do a whole lot of work in League format, but if anyone can do that, it's going to be Mud. Mega Blastoise, which, holy crap, Mega Blastoise puts in the work, and I'm sure Mud will be able to use it to its fullest extent. He has Mamoswine, and everyone knows Mamoswine's good. He has Crobat, which is, good defog, good defensively. Infiltrator is really nice for those stupid subs. He has Registeel, and Registeel can be a pain in the butt if you don't prep for it properly. I know. Flygon, and Flygon is awesome. Flygon, before Gen 7, was my go-to dragon type. Now that it's a tier 3, I don't really pick it up anymore. But Flygon works really well. If you want to be funny and run Defog, not a whole, a lot of people expect that Defog set, and you can run it all the times that it's not Defog. He has Licky Licky, which kind of just sits there and, puffs his cheeks at you. He has Dusknoir, which can really be a pain in the butt if you don't remember that Dusknoir is a thing. Latios, which is one of his, it's like the Latios pick. Why is this towards the end? This would be a round 1 or round 2 pick, but it's how about second to last round pick. And then Luxray sitting there, and a lot of people, I really hope Mud uses Luxray really well. Luxray has been an amazing part of some of my last drafts, so I really hope he uses it well. Moving on to the top 2, and we'll just go off my side, because we flipped each other. I
Mm-hmm.
said that Corey was second, coach of the Buffalo Boswolves or Corona Caterpies or Carolina Caterpies or whatever he wants to be in his lifetime. And Dark was first, coach of the Elm Street Darkrise. And then Vamp had Dark second and Corey first. So I'm going to talk about Corey real fast because you know that the two-time champion is going to come back and defend his title, and his team looks like I if it doesn't get into the playoffs, let alone the finals, then something must have went very, 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 very wrong. Because he has things like Tapu Fini, which is a really good wall and can take care of a lot of things. He has Mega Charizard X, which hits like a truck and can take care of a lot of things. He has Shaman, and if you sleep on Shaman, Shaman can sleep on you. And thanks to Natural Cure, now what a Shaman at 7% is now at 100%. And no one likes that. He has a duck in Porygon 2, and Porygon 2 just is great for Corey because Corey likes to sit there and make you suffer. He has Mesprit, which evidently was Scotty's pick, question mark. I don't know. But Mesprit, I'll be interested to see how he uses it because I think it gets Healing Wish, and that's scary just to think about right now. Is Tapu Fini's at like 8%. I can take this out. Oh nope, it just got Healing Wished. He has Hydreigon, and I want to see a patient Hydreigon because I've never seen that. He has Minshao, and you know Regenerator's coming at some point in time because Corey will make you sit there and wait. He also has Electros, which is like the bane of half my existence.
Okay, I'll go into why I have him at number. And, you know, picking between these last two, I really had to sit down for about half an hour. No joke. And I was comparing every single stat they had. And so I was looking and I was like, okay, well, what happens here? And so I was looking. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to tell you the big deciding factor I had was Corey in the Band Academies only have 29 weaknesses while they have 51 resistances, and the Elm Street Darkrais have 36 weaknesses. So 7 more weaknesses, and I think that's really the deciding point for me. So I had Dark at number 2. That was the main deciding point. You know, Dark has a good team. He has an okay base stat total. His stats overall are very good. However, he does lean towards the physical side with some good special attackers. However, you know, even with those, Salamence really wants to be more physical. You know, Vaporeon, on the most part, is going to only run 1 or 2 special moves. Xurkitree, great special attack. It only has access to like 4 or 5 viable moves. And then, you know, Magearna's his main special attacker. He has a lot more options on the physical side, obviously, with things like Mega Lopunny, Snorlax, Crocodile, Serena, Armaldo, Gourgeist even, depending on the size. Even Rapidash and Salamence. He has 2 good hazard setters, which pretty good. His abilities are really good. He has good ways of removing hazards. I just feel that the Caterpies, or I guess they switched the name to the Buzzwalls now, have better ways of removing hazards, even though they don't have Rapid Spin. You know, even though Dark has Armaldo and Serena as Rapid Spinners, you know, Salamence probably isn't going to use Defog. And even though, you know, he has good clerics in Vaporeon, Mega Lopunny, and Serena, you know, Mega Cleric. Corey does have the Shaman as a cleric, so. But, you know, Tapu Fini, defogging is one of the main jobs that this thing is going to do, and it can come every week. Mega Charizard X, yeah, you don't really want to see defog on it. Gliscor, he has the option to, but I think it's going to be mainly Tapu Fini, whereas Serena, Armaldo are very niche brings. You can't reliably bring them every week. And, you know, I think that's a major factor in where, you know, I'm seeing this is they were very close, like very close. And I think that, you know, Corey just like even like by a hair outbeat Dark for that. But I want to hear why you had Dark at number 1.
So, first off, just thinking about Dark, he lost to Corey season 1 because of speed tie. Season 2, There's a chance that he lost to Corey because of a crit. Dark is, I wouldn't be surprised if Dark isn't already studying Corey's team. Okay, I'm facing this guy in the playoffs. I'm going to. This is the team I have. These are the sets I'm bringing. And because Corey really doesn't like to trade out his mons. I remember interviewing him for League Center. He doesn't really do that. He has his team, he sits there, and he makes it work. And Dark is looking to take revenge over the last 2 seasons of him being so close, and then one thing goes wrong. And he has the mons to really make things go right. Mega Lopunny is one of the hardest hitting megas in the game, and if you don't prep for that thing, then what are you doing? He has Salamence, which, yeah, you can run specially offensive Salamence, you can run physically offensive Salamence, you can run defensive Salamence. Wishments is a thing, and I have seen that make people cry. Yeah, I've cried over that too. Rapidash is a fire type, and I feel like Dark is going to use that really well. Gourgeist is one of the best tier 5 picks in my opinion, being also a ghost type and being a grass type. I mean, even though he has a weird core of Rapidash, Gourgeist, and Vaporeon, which Vaporeon, everyone knows what Vaporeon's going to do. He has Krookodile, which that means banded or scarfed, or something else to throw rocks on, and Scarf can be really scary. He has Xurkitree, and if you can't take out Xurkitree, then you better have a special wall. Otherwise, yeah, say goodbye to your team. He has Snorlax, and Snorlax died once last season. Once. That was because of Corey. And with Magearna being his first pick, which works really well with Mega Lopunny, except for, well, yeah, even works really well with Mega Lopunny, I fully expect Dark to come out full force. I believe they play each other week. No, they do not play each other week 1. But when week 4, when it's Dark versus Corey, I expect that to be, okay, this is going to be like the finals of pretty much the last 2 seasons. So I know that there's hazard stuff with Dark, and he does have 2 rapid spinners that are, and he has Defog with Salamence, which is, not honestly that bad. Dark's never really worried about hazards, and he's always been able to work around them and do a very good job. Grant, now he has Mega Lopunny, which doesn't want chip damage in the first place. I feel like Dark will come in there, and I wouldn't be too surprised if he isn't close to the perfect season he had last season in the IDL.
I think that actually wraps it up, though.
It does. I am very sorry for all you people who had to listen to me and Vampire talk for over an hour, but there's a lot of good teams here. This is one of the best IDL seasons in my opinion, and I've been a part of it for 3 seasons now. I can say that because I was analyst for week 1. And I really hope you enjoy the videos that come from this. There will be a lot from me. There will be a lot of awesome videos on Pickem Crew. If you want to be in the Pickem Crew, you better message me because I'm working on that while I'm saying this. Seriously. Unless it's like 4 in the morning, then I better not be working on it. Potentially, if I have enough time on my hands, everyone's links will be in the description. It may be just me and Vampire. It may be no one. It may be everyone. So, thank you for joining me, Vampire. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to see, what happens in week 1, and I'm excited to just bring you guys these battles.
So, that is all. My name's Commander. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment down below, and we will see you again next time.
Bye, everyone.